The orange pill bottle sat on the kitchen table like a loaded gun. Inside, only 2 pills remained. Outside, Ohio's November wind rattled the windows of the small house on Maple Street in Canton. But Arthur Henderson wasn't shaking from the cold. His trembling hands held a pharmacy receipt that might as well have been a death sentence. Amount due, $645. Arthur was 72 years old. For 47 years, he'd been married to Martha. For 30 years, he'd worked the steel mills until his back gave out. For his entire life, he'd never owed anyone a dime. But now, staring at that number with only $120 in his checking account and 2 weeks until his pension check arrived, Arthur faced an impossible choice. Let his wife's heart medication run out or find $645 he didn't have. Martha was in the living room, wrapped in 2 blankets, unaware that her husband had just made a decision that would nearly kill him. Arthur looked at the pill bottle one more time, then at his wife's gentle face visible through the doorway. That night, he made his first critical mistake. He decided to fight this battle alone. It had started that Tuesday morning at Miller's Pharmacy on 12th Street. Arthur had been picking up Martha's prescriptions like he did every month for the past 3 years. Blood thinners and heart rhythm medication that kept her alive after the bypass surgery. He'd handed his Medicare card to Mary, the pharmacist who'd known them for decades. Mary's face had turned pale as she stared at her computer screen. "Arthur," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you about something." She led him to the consultation window, away from other customers. What she said next would change everything. "Your Medicare Part D has reached what we call the coverage gap, or the donut hole. You've hit your spending limit for the year. From now until January 1st, you're responsible for the full cost of Martha's medications." Arthur felt his chest tighten. "But we pay our premiums every month. I thought the government was supposed to cover this." Mary shook her head slowly, sympathy flooding her eyes. "The system works like this. Medicare covers you until you hit a certain spending threshold. This year, it's $5,030 in total drug costs. Once you cross that line, you enter the gap. You'll pay 25% of generic drugs and brand-name drugs until you spend another $8,000 out of pocket. Only then does catastrophic coverage kick in." $8,000? Arthur's voice cracked. "We don't have $8,000. We barely have $800. "I know, Arthur. I'm so sorry." Martha's Eliquis and Multoc, together, cost $645 this month. Without insurance, that's what you're looking at. Arthur stood frozen. The fluorescent lights above buzzed mercilessly. Behind him, the pharmacy continued its normal rhythm. People picking up antibiotics, blood pressure pills, diabetes medication, blissfully unaware that the system could betray them just as easily. What Arthur didn't know, and what Mary didn't have time to explain in that busy moment, was that there were solutions. Multiple solutions. But pride, fear, and exhaustion would keep him from finding them for 3 devastating weeks. He walked back to his 1998 Honda Civic in the parking lot, sat behind the wheel, and stared at nothing. He couldn't tell Martha. She was too fragile, too guilt-ridden already about being a burden on him. If he told her the medication cost $645, she'd tell him to let her die rather than spend the money. He knew her too well. Arthur started the car and made his second critical mistake. Instead of going to Martha's cardiologist to ask about alternatives, instead of calling Medicare's helpline, instead of researching patient assistance programs, he drove straight home and lied to his wife. "They said there's a delay with the shipment, honey," he told Martha, that evening forcing a smile. Pills will be here tomorrow or the day after. Martha believed him. Why wouldn't she? Arthur had never lied to her in 47 years of marriage. But the clock was ticking. Those 2 remaining pills would last exactly 2 more days. The next morning, Arthur put on his best flannel shirt, the one without holes, and drove to the industrial district on the south side of Canton. He'd seen a sign the week before. Night shift warehouse. Workers needed. 15-hour. Apply within. The building was massive, a distribution center for an online retailer. Inside, the human resources office smelled like fresh paint and desperation. A young man, maybe 25, barely looked up from his computer. "Help you?" "I'm here about the night shift position," Arthur said, standing as straight as his 72-year-old back would allow. The young man finally glanced up, took in Arthur's white hair and weathered face, and raised an eyebrow. "It's physical labor, sir. Loading trucks, moving inventory on your feet for 8 hours. You sure you can handle that?" Arthur thought about the steel mill. Thought about 30 years of 110-degree heat, molten metal, and 12-hour shifts. "Son, I've worked harder days than you've had birthdays." Something in Arthur's eyes must have convinced him. "All right, fill out this application. If you can pass the drug test, you start Monday night, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Arthur's hand trembled slightly as he filled out the paperwork. Employment history. Canton Steelworks, 1973-2003. Reason for leaving. Plant closure. He left the 20-year gap since then completely blank. He passed the drug test. He started that Monday. What Arthur didn't know, what he would learn in the most painful way possible, was that the human body remembers every year it's been alive. And you can't fool it into being 40 again, no matter how desperately you need the money. The first night at the warehouse was hell disguised as hope. The concrete floor was unforgiving. The fluorescent lights hummed like angry bees. Young workers with earbuds and energy, drinks moved through the space like machines, pulling items, scanning barcodes, loading boxes onto conveyor belts with ruthless efficiency. Arthur's station was in the shipping department. His job: take 25-pound boxes off a moving belt, scan them, stack them on pallets, shrink-wrap the pallets, and move them with a pallet jack to the loading dock. Repeat for 8 hours. The first box made his lower back scream. The 10th made his knees buckle. By the 100th, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the scanner. But with every box, Arthur counted. 15, 30, 45, 60. The eyelash money was accumulating. During his 15-minute break at 2 a.m., Arthur sat on a concrete step outside the loading dock. The November air cut through his thin jacket. His supervisor, a man half his age, walked by. "You okay, old-timer? You look rough." "I'm fine," Arthur lied. "Just need some water." But he wasn't fine. His heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. His chest felt tight. His left arm had a dull ache that he told himself was just muscle strain from lifting boxes. Here's where Arthur made his third critical mistake, the one that would nearly cost him his life. He ignored his own body's warning signs because he was too focused on saving Martha. See, Arthur had his own prescriptions, blood pressure medication and cholesterol pills. But to save money for Martha's drugs, he'd stopped taking his own 2 weeks ago. "I'll be fine," he told himself. "I'm strong. I can handle a little high blood pressure." That's what pride sounds like when it's killing you. By the end of the first week, Arthur had earned $600, so close to the $645 target, just 3 more shifts. But the cost was visible. Martha noticed. "Arthur, you look exhausted. Are you feeling okay?" "Just been helping at the community center, teaching woodworking to teenagers." "Takes more energy than I expected," he lied, adding another brick to the wall between truth and survival. Martha smiled, proud of him for staying active. "That's wonderful, honey. But don't overdo it. You're not as young as you used to be." If only she knew. The second week was worse. Arthur's body was in open rebellion. His back spasmed constantly. His knees were so swollen he had to wear loose sweatpants instead of his usual jeans. At night, after his shift, he'd sit in the car in the driveway for 10 minutes, sometimes 15, just trying to gather the strength to walk inside without limping. But here's what makes this tragedy even more senseless. While Arthur was destroying his body for $645, there were at least 4 solutions he knew nothing about. Mistake number 1. He never asked about generic alternatives. Martha's Eliquis, the blood thinner, was a brand-name drug. Arthur had never asked the doctor, "Is there a generic version of this?" Pride stopped him. He didn't want to admit he couldn't afford it. But here's the truth that could have saved him. While Eliquis itself has no generic, the doctor could have switched Martha to warfarin, a generic blood thinner that costs about $15 a month instead of $450. The lesson: always ask your doctor if a generic alternative exists. Doctors won't always offer it unless you ask. Your pride is not worth your life. Mistake number 2. He didn't know about manufacturer patient assistance programs. The company that makes Eliquis, Bristol Myers Squibb, has a program called the BMS Access Support Program. If your income is below a certain level, and for a retired couple, Arthur and Martha definitely qualified, you can get the medication for free. Completely free, not reduced, free. All it required was filling out a form and providing proof of income. Arthur would discover this 3 weeks too late, lying in a hospital bed. The lesson: every major drug manufacturer has a patient assistance program. Google drug name patient assistance program before you panic. The medication that's bankrupting you might be available for free. Mistake number 3. He ignored prescription discount programs. Arthur had never heard of GoodRx, RxSaver, or SingleCare, apps and websites that show you the cheapest pharmacy prices in your area. The same prescription can cost $645 at one pharmacy and $280 at another 2 blocks away. But Arthur, like many elderly Americans, didn't think to look online. He trusted his longtime pharmacist and assumed all pharmacies charged the same price. The lesson: never fill a prescription without checking GoodRx or similar apps first. It takes 30 seconds and can save you hundreds of dollars. Mistake number 4. He never applied for extra help. Medicare has a program called the Low Income Subsidy, LIS, commonly called Extra Help. If you qualify, and the income limits are surprisingly generous, Medicare covers your prescription costs even in the donut hole. Arthur and Martha probably qualified. Their only income was his pension of $1,800 a month and her Social Security of $900 a month. But Arthur had never applied because he thought low income meant welfare, and he was too proud for that. The lesson: low-income programs aren't just for the destitute. If you're struggling to pay for prescriptions, you probably qualify for extra help. Apply at ssa.gov, Medicare Prescription Help. Your pride is not worth your life. Wednesday of the 3rd week was the busiest night the warehouse had seen in months. Black Friday was approaching, and online orders were flooding in. The supervisor was barking orders. "Faster! We're behind schedule. Move, move, move!" Arthur had worked 11 days straight. No days off. His body was running on fumes, cheap gas station coffee, and the desperate hope that just 3 more shifts would get him to 640 fires. At 3:47 a.m., Arthur reached for a 30-pound box of kitty litter on the top shelf. As he lifted it, the world tilted. The first thing he felt was pressure. Not pain yet, just an overwhelming sense that someone had placed a car on his chest and was slowly adding more weight. His left arm went numb. The box slipped from his hands and crashed to the floor, spilling gray pellets across the concrete. Arthur grabbed the shelf to steady himself, but his legs weren't cooperating. He sank to his knees, then to all fours, gasping for air that wouldn't come. A young worker named Brandon saw him first. "Yo! Old dude's down! Someone call 911!" Everything after that happened in fragments. The cold concrete against his cheek. The distant wail of sirens. Someone asking, "Does anyone know his name? Who should we call?" Martha's face appearing above him, tears streaming, her voice breaking. "Arthur, why? Why didn't you tell me?" Then darkness. Arthur woke up in Canton Mercy Hospital's cardiac unit. Fluorescent lights, beeping machines, an IV in his arm. And Martha, sitting beside his bed, eyes red from crying, holding a crumpled wad of bills in her hand. "They found this in your jacket pocket," she whispered, her voice hollow. $600 in cash, and your work badge." Arthur tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. "The warehouse called me," Martha continued. "They said you'd been working there for 3 weeks. Night shifts, loading boxes." Her voice broke. "You had a heart attack, Arthur. A real heart attack. You almost died." "The pills," Arthur managed to croak. "Your pills." Martha put her hand on his cheek, her touch infinitely gentle and infinitely sad. "You stupid, wonderful, stubborn man. You almost killed yourself for 645. A nurse came in, followed by a woman Arthur had never seen before. She introduced herself as Sarah, a hospital social worker. "Mr. Henderson, I've reviewed your situation," Sarah said, sitting down with a clipboard. "I need to tell you something that's going to be very hard to hear." Arthur braced himself. "Everything you just went through, the secret job, the warehouse, the heart attack, none of it was necessary." Arthur stared at her. Sarah opened her folder. "Your wife's Eliquis prescription. The manufacturer has a patient assistance program. With your income level, she qualifies for the medication completely free. I've already submitted the paperwork. Her pills will arrive in 5 business days at no cost." The room spun. Arthur felt like he might vomit. "Additionally," Sarah continued, "I ran your numbers through Medicare's Extra Help program. You qualify for that, too. It will cover the donut hole gap going forward. Your total out-of-pocket for prescriptions next year will be about $15 per month for both of you." Martha started crying again. "Finally," Sarah said, pulling out a phone. "I checked GoodRx for the cash price of Martha's medications at pharmacies near your house. The grocery store pharmacy 2 blocks from you charges $310 for the same prescription that Miller's Pharmacy quoted you at $645. You could have saved $335 just by calling around." Arthur couldn't speak. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of destroying his body, lying to his wife, working himself into a heart attack, all for a problem that had multiple free or low-cost solutions. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he finally managed to ask. Sarah's expression was kind but firm. "Mr. Henderson, these programs exist. The information is out there. But the system doesn't automatically help you. You have to ask. You have to research. You have to advocate for yourself." She leaned forward. I see this all the time. Proud people, good people, who would rather die than ask for help or admit they can't afford something. Pride kills more seniors than almost any disease. Arthur spent 2 days in the hospital. The heart attack had been what doctors called moderate, serious enough to damage his heart, but not enough to kill him. Yet. His cardiologist, Dr. Patel, was blunt. "Mr. Henderson, you're lucky to be alive. Your cholesterol is through the roof. Your blood pressure is dangerously high, and you've been off your medications for how long?" 3 weeks, Arthur admitted. 3 weeks of uncontrolled hypertension, physical strain, no sleep, and stress. You turned your heart into a time bomb and then lit the fuse. Dr. Patel shook his head. At 72, your body doesn't have much forgiveness left. Another week of what you were doing, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Probably with your wife, not with you. The words hit harder than any box Arthur had lifted. They went home on Friday. The house felt different now, smaller, sadder. The thermostat was still set to 60 degrees. Arthur had been too busy working to notice they'd been freezing, and Martha immediately turned it up to 72. "We're not going to freeze to death to save $30 on the gas bill," she said firmly. "Not anymore." That afternoon, Sarah the social worker called. "Mr. Henderson, I have one more resource for you. HEAP, the Home Energy Assistance Program. Ohio offers it for low-income seniors. It will cover most of your heating costs this winter. I'm emailing you the application." Arthur sat at the kitchen table, staring at his computer screen. Application after application. Programs he'd never heard of. Help he'd been too proud to seek. He thought about the question that had haunted him 3 weeks ago. Medicine or heat? As if those were the only two options. As if there weren't a dozen programs designed specifically to prevent seniors from having to make that choice. Martha came up behind him, put her hands on his shoulders. "We're going to learn together," she said. "No more secrets, no more lies, no more pride getting in the way of help." Arthur nodded, his eyes wet. It's been 6 months since that night. Arthur still goes to cardiac rehab twice a week. His heart will never be the same as it was. The damage is permanent. Some days he can barely walk up the stairs. Some nights he wakes up in a panic, feeling that crushing weight on his chest again. Martha's pills arrive every month, courtesy of the Manufacturer's Assistance Program. Total cost, $0. Their other medications come through Medicare Extra Help. Total monthly cost, $15. They're warm this winter. The HEAP program covered their heating bill, but Arthur paid a price that can't be measured in dollars. He traded years of his life, actual years, according to Dr. Patel, for pride and silence. He'll never get that heart muscle back. He'll never lift his grandkids again. Some days, he can barely lift a bag of groceries, all because he didn't ask for help when help was available. The crucial lessons from Arthur's story. What Arthur did wrong, the deadly mistakes. 1. He kept financial medical crises secret from his spouse. Isolation makes terrible situations deadly. He never asked his doctor about generic alternatives. Pride prevented a 5-minute conversation that could have saved $600. 3. He didn't research manufacturer patient assistance programs. Free medication was one Google search away. 4. He failed to check multiple pharmacies or use price comparison apps. GoodRx could have cut the cost in half. 5. He didn't apply for Medicare Extra Help, low-income subsidy. Qualified for coverage, but never asked. 6. He stopped taking his own medications to save money. created a lethal health crisis while solving nothing. 7. He ignored his body's warning signs. Chest pain, arm numbness, exhaustion, classic heart attack symptoms dismissed. 8. He chose physical labor his body couldn't handle. 72-year-old bodies aren't 40-year-old bodies, no matter how tough you once were. 9. He equated asking for help with weakness. Pride nearly killed him. What Arthur should have done, the life-saving steps. 1. Immediately called Martha's doctor about the medication cost. Doctors can often switch to cheaper alternatives or provide samples. 2. Googled medication name, Patient Assistance Program. Most brand-name drugs have free programs for low-income patients. 3. Used GoodRx or RxSaver before filling any prescription. Prices vary wildly between pharmacies. 4. Applied for Medicare, extra help at SSA.gov, Medicare Prescription Help. Takes 20 minutes and can save thousands. 5. Called Medicare's helpline at 1-800-MEDICARE. Free counseling on coverage options. 6. Talked honestly with Martha about the financial crisis. Partners can't help if they don't know there's a problem. 7. Research state and county assistance programs. Most states have emergency prescription assistance. 8. Ask the pharmacist about pharmacy discount programs. Many chains have their own low-cost programs. 9. Continued taking his own medications. Never sacrifice your health to solve a financial problem. 10. Sought help from a hospital social worker or community health center. They exist specifically to navigate these situations. The hard truth about the Medicare Donut Hole. The coverage gap is unreal, and it's devastating to people on fixed incomes. In 2024, you enter the donut hole after your plan, and you together have spent $5,030 on covered drugs. You stay in it until you've spent $8,000 out of pocket. Then catastrophic coverage begins. But here's what the system doesn't advertise. There are escape routes. Generic drugs save lives and money. Manufacturer programs offer free medication. Extra help eliminates the gap entirely for qualifying individuals. State pharmaceutical assistance programs exist in many states. Prescription discount cards work even with Medicare. The tragedy isn't just the donut hole. The tragedy is all the Arthur Hendersons out there who are suffering in silence, too proud or too scared or too tired to ask for help that actually exists. So I'm asking you right now, are you Arthur? Are you skipping doses to stretch a prescription? Are you choosing between medication and food, heat, or rent? Are you keeping financial medical crises secret from your family? Are you working yourself to death because you don't know there are other options? If you answered yes to any of these questions, please, I'm begging you, stop right now and do 3 things. 1. Google your medication name, Patient Assistance Program. 2. Call 1-800-MEDICARE and ask about extra help. 3. Tell someone who loves you what you're going through. Your pride is not worth your life. Your silence is not strength. Asking for help is not weakness. Arthur learned all of this in a warehouse at 3:47 in the morning when his heart gave out. Don't wait for your own warehouse floor. Don't wait for your own heart attack. The help is there, but you have to reach for it.